Hi vinyl community, John here. I wanted to make a short video taking up the points and I guess the question that James Griffiths has asked about how did he phrase it? Where, when and how do you listen to your records? It's actually quite an important thing if you think about it, but I don't recall at any time when that's ever been discussed on the vinyl community. James also described how his sort of situation now is requires lots of compromise things, and I think I'm probably in a similar situation because right now in this time of life, this year I suppose, and for the foreseeable future, I, to be honest, don't really get much time to listen to records at all, not nearly as much as I'd like to. It is quite nice to reminisce about the younger days when you could just you could waste a whole day, a whole weekend listening to records when you were younger, when you didn't have responsibilities, and we did. I'm sure most of us did. When you get to be sort of somebody of a mature age and you have responsibilities, you have children, partners, wives, or husbands, as the case may be, pets, jobs, mortgages, somehow that kind of time dwindles away, doesn't it? And that's, I think, where I am right now. But in terms of listening, we've just moved house, as many of you know. The last house that we lived in, we were only there a little more than a year since we moved back to the UK from Sweden. There I had my own separate room, which is an office. I'm self-employed, so I work at home. And I kept my records in there with me, all of them. My main stereo, my speakers, was in there too. And although it sounds like, the ideal setup, we found, not just me, but my partner and I, my wife and I, we found that it somehow removed music and kind of playing of records outside of the family environment somehow, and it did. And when we had people come around, for evenings or whatever, when I would normally play a record, I would do, but it would be hard to kind of enjoy it and hear it because it was happening in the next room down the hall, as opposed to around you. So moving here to the house that we're in now, we don't have that luxury of space. My workspace is now in the office, in the loft, which is where I am now. And in the beginning I didn't really like the idea of this, but to be honest with you, it's quite good because I can be at home in the house where I live, but I'm somehow kind of removed from the home because I'm in the roof. I haven't got the same distractions when I can just go to the kitchen or do this, put the washing in, whatever, because I need to go down a ladder. So it's quite nice, and also it's fairly peaceful. I don't really get disturbed. I've got a skylight window, and that's quite pleasant. But that means that my stereo and my record player and my records, they are in the living space right now, in the living room. And children want to watch TV. My wife and I don't really watch much television, seldom. It can happen, but it's not very often. We don't do it by habit or anything. It's only if there is something special that you want to see. And so that works quite nice, but yeah, you always got that conflict of interest. Children want to watch their cartoons or whatever it is, CBBC. And so, and even if they're not doing that, they're playing a game or something like that. So it's often quite hard to enjoy music in those circumstances. So I just simply don't bother. However, I will say this, that Sundays I make a conscious effort to play jazz music, purely because I noticed right from the very beginning when I started listening to jazz music that it had such a nice effect on our living space. I don't voice this in front of my family or my children, but I do notice with something very cool and mellow, it just makes for a nicer space. I don't really understand why, but it does, and that now has become our sort of Sunday afternoon thing. Dad puts on jazz records, and that's nice. I used to have a habit where after dinner time every day I would put on a record, and that was always quite nice. When we lived in California, houses in California, well, in America generally, are just so big. I can remember after dinner putting on a record or two, sort of around about 6:30, I suppose, after we'd finished. And my youngest daughter would dance around the room to it. She likes to dance, and she does ballet and things. And that was always quite a nice moment. Kind of added to the whatever it is I was listening to. But hey, in the UK I don't have that luxury of space for her to be able to do that. And she certainly couldn't dance up here in the loft. Another thing is, I will say, is that I spend a lot of time listening to the radio, to talk radio. Here in the UK we've got the BBC, which is amazing, brilliant. It gets a lot of criticism, I'm sure, from various people, but if you've ever lived any amount of time outside of having the BBC, it's just wonderful. And so BBC Radio 4, it's the first thing I listen to in the morning when I wake up. I like to catch the news through the day and whatever current affairs they're talking about. They also do pretty good documentary programs, comedy programs, and so that generally does tend to dominate a lot of my listening time. I'm fortunate in that the work that I do, I'm a designer, so I work with visual things, and apparently the part of my mind that I use to work with these things, I can do and listen to the radio and enjoy comedy or news or what have you at the same time. The moment I have to start writing or reading something, I have to turn everything off because I just can't do it. I can't concentrate on reading and writing if I've got either the radio or music playing. But I guess, yeah, because 95% of what I do is visual, I'm quite spoiled like that I can just listen to talk radio and listen to some wonderful things. You spoke, James, about this pattern where you might put on a record, play it all the way through, get to the last song and pat yourself on the back. You've played it all the way through and listened to it, but you can't actually remember listening or enjoying it. I find I do that if I play music while I work. It just goes around and round and round, needle crosses the surface. But the pleasure that you get from listening to a record while I'm working is, it just doesn't happen. So it doesn't leave an awful lot of time, does it? Chris at Dixieland Farm couple of years ago, put out a challenge there for people in the VC to listen to a whole record from start to finish while doing absolutely nothing. And it sounded like an easy thing to do. I actually made it my New Year's resolution last year, and I probably kept it up for about 6 or 7 weeks, but then drifted off, and I haven't done it since then, really. I found myself sort of forcing myself to sit down and listen to music. And I would sit there and think, why did I put this on? I'm going to put something else on. So I'd stop a couple of minutes in, put something else on, listen to that, and think, you're kind of just continually thinking about something else I could listen to, which is a double-edged sword, isn't it? You have this abundance of music and records around you if you're a collector, but you can be spoilt for choice. I find that a lot. And with that in mind, I think times in my life when I've enjoyed music the most and listened most to it have been the times when I've got a smaller amount to listen to. So the least amount of music I have available to it, the more I seem to enjoy it. I guess because it takes away that question, what am I going to listen to? You haven't got so much to choose between. I learnt to like Ram by Wings, was it, Paul McCartney? That way. I remember that was probably the only record I had available to me when I got that. It's when my wife and I bought our first house, and we listened to it all the time. And even now, when we hear that, it reminds us of that event, that occasion. As a student, didn't have so much money. I couldn't go record collecting like I do now. I'd maybe buy 1 or 2 every other week, I suppose, and when you did that, you just consumed them to so much more fully. Just thoughts. But at the moment, I don't really get as much time as I'd like to listen to music. I think it's a bad habit for me to lay awake late into the evening, into the night, into the early hours of the morning, listening to music, because it's the sort of thing that I could easily fall into, where I start to live a nocturnal life. As a family man, I have to get up, get the kids ready for school, make their lunch, all that sort of stuff. And trying to do that when you've gone to bed at 2 because you were listening to Dark Side of the Moon or something, it isn't very pleasant. But life will change. Eventually my children will be of the age where they can do things for themselves much more, be more self-motivated. When that time comes, a lot of the records which I collect now, I will be able to enjoy much more fully, I suppose. Interesting subject, James. Thanks for asking it, and it's interesting to see other people's views and hear what they have to say. Alright, well, have a good weekend. Thanks everybody. Check out my next video. Bye.